Hello and welcome to LFC Focus. Liverpool are taking on Crystal Palace this weekend in yet another Premier League match and their first home game of the season. And the mood amongst Liverpool fans before this game is, I think, one of trepidation really, because we don't want to get our hopes up too much going into this game, but we also don't want to be too miserable going into it either, because obviously we don't want an atmosphere of doom and gloom going into the first home game of the season. We want to be excited about the match. We want to be, cheering the team on and helping them to get the result that we all want them to get in this game, especially given that it will have the home support around it. There'll be loads of Liverpool fans in the stadium to help cheer the team on. But I think we don't want to get our hopes up too much either just yet, because obviously while we did perform well against Hoffenheim and suggested that maybe we were putting the Watford result behind us, I don't think we want to go into the match like we did against Watford, where expectations were at an all-time high. We'd had a great pre-season. We thought we were going to have a great Premier League season as well, and then all of our hopes were absolutely crushed during that match. So I think we're probably just going to wait and see how this match pans out rather than make any bold calls about how exactly it's going to go. So injury news going into this game then. Phil Coutinho is of course still out with his back injury. I mean, make of that again what you will. There is a possibility that he could have some sort of injury complaint. I think it is quite likely though that the club are simply trying to keep him out of the limelight now. I don't think that it's because he is going to Barcelona or anything, but I think it's not really ideal if you end up playing Phil Coutinho during a game. He might get man of the match or something, and then Sky Sports will insist on a post-match interview with him where they just spend 2 minutes asking him about nothing other than Barcelona. It's not great for PR and probably not that great for transfer negotiations or anything like that either. So it's best to kind of withhold Phil Coutinho from the limelight for now, kind of like Man U did with David De Gea when there was that summer, I think it was 2014, where there was so much gossip about whether or not he was going to go to Real Madrid, and then they just kind of kept him and withheld him from the press that whole time, and then once the transfer window was out of the way, he came straight back into the first team and no one said any more about it. And they've done fairly well off the back of it. He's still at the club, so hopefully we can do something similar with regards to Phil Coutinho. Daniel Sturridge is back fit for this game after missing the last two, which is incredibly good news. It certainly helps our squad depth with regard to forward options. I'm not entirely sure that he goes straight into the lineup for this one. I think it's kind of more likely that he'll probably be on the bench, but there is a chance that he could come into the lineup simply because Jurgen Klopp did say in his press conference today that there were still one or two knocks from Hoffenheim as well. He didn't actually mention any particular players, but EMRE and Sadio Mane did miss training today as well. So there's a suggestion that they may have been those players to pick up those knocks. Obviously, there's the issue of fatigue as well. It's not necessarily a huge surprise that players are going to be missing training sessions, especially I think Sadio Mane, because he is a hugely athletic player. He does an awful lot of sprinting and an awful lot of running up and down the pitch, as we all know and love. And I think EMRE Can, obviously, he came into pre-season a little bit later, so it's possible that he isn't quite at the same standard of fitness as the other players in the first team squad. So given that Klopp didn't necessarily name them in his press conference, which if a player is definitely injured, he tends to do by and large, I think it's possible that they could still play in the game again on Saturday, and it could simply be a precaution to ensure that they maintain their fitness for that game. If they're not available, then I think with EMRE Can, it's a fairly straight swap for who replaces him. It is probably going to be James Milner because he's a centre midfielder at the end of the day, and we don't really have that many others in the squad. And he also did put in a fairly decent performance against Hoffenheim for that last half hour, and kind of, the whole midfield, as I said in the post-match video, actually tended to perform better when Milner was on the pitch. So while I have been a critic of Milner in the past, I wouldn't necessarily be too upset to see him come into the game if EMRE Can does need a little bit of a rest. With Sadio Mane, it's slightly less easy to call if he does miss the game what will actually change with regards to the starting 11. I think there's kind of two ways Klopp could go about it. With both of them, I'd say that Daniel Sturridge is the one that comes in, but there's a possibility that he could play on the right wing and Salah could switch to the left, and then he's asked to maybe cut inside a little bit more. We'd expect him to do that and create a few chances for himself. Or we could alternatively go to the 4-4-2 diamond that we tried towards the end of last season that was very good when playing smaller clubs like Crystal Palace. No offence to any Palace fans who may, for whatever reason, be watching this video. But I think that could work with Salah in the number 10, where he has played quite a bit for Roma and where he has got quite a few goals for Roma. And then having Firmino and Sturridge as a front two. But as of now, I don't think it's hugely likely that Mane and EMRE Can will miss this game. I think it is simply precautionary to make sure that they are fit enough to actually start the match. So the big news around Crystal Palace before this game is injury news as well. They are missing Wilfried Zaha going into this match, which anyone who especially actually watched the game that we played against them in the Asia Trophy in pre-season will know that that is very good news for Liverpool, because he is, I think, by now, by far and away, Crystal Palace's best player, and he is a huge threat to Liverpool with his pace and strength coming down those wings. So that is a big, very strong positive bonus for us. And Palace are, of course, taking time, I think, to adapt to playing under their new manager, Frank de Boer, because he likes to play a very different style to Sam Allardyce, their last manager. He doesn't like that sort of long ball physical style of play. He's much more interested in sort of gentle possession football, I suppose you could call it. And given how they did play in the game against Huddersfield, where they lost 3-0 on opening day, I think it's safe to say that the players are taking a little bit of time to adapt to the system. I'm not saying that it won't eventually work at Crystal Palace. I think it's entirely possible that once De Boer gets going and realises the best way to utilise his preferred systems, they could start playing well. But I don't think it's a similar situation to Chelsea when they started playing a 3-4-3 and it just instantly clicked for him, and Conte straight away, he knew the players that fitted that system. I think it will take a little bit of experimenting from Frank de Boer before he actually realises how best to utilise his system, because obviously they do play three at the back as well, and I think three at the back is the kind of system where there are some defenders that are very good at it and there are some defenders who are just simply terrible at it. I mean, when Liverpool tried it a few seasons ago with, I think it was Sakho, Skrtel and Emre Can, it worked very well, but when they tried it last season with Joel Matip, Ranjar Klavan and Dejan Lovren, it didn't really come off. So it might take him a while to adapt, and that means it is kind of a very good time for Liverpool to play Crystal Palace, simply because they are in this transitional period where they are not necessarily playing at their best. I think the best way for Liverpool to take advantage of this as well, having looked at the highlights of their game, of Crystal Palace's game against Huddersfield, is to attack with a lot of speed and decisiveness, because a lot of Huddersfield's goals came from attacking very quickly, only playing a few passes, maybe even just playing one pass out to the wing, getting the cross in quickly, a bit of one-touch football, and then Steve Mounier, I think it was normally, would get his head on the ball and they'd get goals. And I think a lot of that does come down to the back three situation, and how if you don't have players who are used to playing in a back three or don't necessarily understand the demands of it, then sometimes they can take a while to adapt to it on the pitch as well. And so if they see the opposition coming at them, it might take them a while to sort of understand what's going on, try and work out where their position should be, what they should be doing, whether they should be closing a man down or holding off to make sure that they're covering the space that they're meant to be covering. And if you do attack with speed, you do get the ball in the box quickly, you simply don't give defenders time to respond to it. And I think that is what Liverpool should do, especially if they have players like Mane and Salah in their side, who are definitely no strangers to the word speed. So, 3 reasons why I think we will beat Crystal Palace. The first one for me is the home support, because I think that could be absolutely massive for Liverpool. I think Liverpool are a confidence team. They play best when they've got the wind in their sails and they really believe they can beat the opposition, which is why I think when we got to January and February last year, we had a couple of losses, we had a couple of bad performances and bad results, and we just got ourselves into this rut that took us so long to get out of. And it wasn't until we got some real confidence boosting wins against teams like Spurs and Arsenal that we really were able to pick ourselves up out of the gutter. And I think it was a confidence thing against Watford, really, because we talked about the defence, which as we all know is a running problem and is also to do with things like quality and I think the standard of defensive coaching that's currently available and on offer at Liverpool Football Club. But I think it is something to do with the psychological state of the players on the pitch as well. The way that we went behind so early on in the game had an overall effect on the squad as well, and I think it did spread to the attack because they simply weren't as fluid as they were in pre-season. They weren't playing with this sort of freedom that we've come to expect from Jurgen Klopp's team. So I think if they're playing in front of their own fans, and if the fans that are in that stadium on Saturday afternoon get behind the team and cheer them on and really show their support and show that they believe in them, then I think there's no reason why Liverpool can't absolutely blow away Crystal Palace with that kind of support. And secondly, as I mentioned earlier, Palace under De Boer are going to be a very different team to what they were under Sam Allardyce. And I think, as we all know, Palace, they're a kind of a bogey team for Liverpool. We certainly seem to have a hoodoo on them, especially at Anfield, where we've lost our last 3 league games against them. So there is a lot of worry in this game that is going to carry on, especially after familiar problems resurfaced in the game against Watford. It doesn't look like Liverpool have dealt with the problems that gave them so many issues against Crystal Palace in the past. But like I said, they're a different team under De Boer, and they don't really look like they're capable of utilising players like Christian Benteke in the same way that they have done in the past. They look much more interested in possession football. They don't seem to be that big on set pieces or even counter-attacks or anything like that. And I think that could massively work in Liverpool's favour going into this game, and hopefully it should give our defence a bit of a confidence boost as well. And finally, I think Firmino could be absolutely huge for us in this game because, as I mentioned, the issue with the back three at Palace is that they don't really necessarily know their roles, and when the ball gets played around quickly, they can struggle to adapt to what's actually going on the pitch. And Firmino is the worst possible player that I think that people can come up against if they are in that situation, because he's not like a traditional number 9. You don't always know where he's going to be. He's not always going to be in the box. Sometimes he drifts out wide. Sometimes he plays off the shoulder and tries to make diagonal runs. Sometimes he'll drop out wide or drop deep as well. So it's pretty much impossible for them to actually predict what he's doing. And if they can't do that, they have to adapt to what he's doing. And if they're struggling to do that because they're playing in a back three, then they're going to have problems. So I think Firmino, if he's on his game, there is a possibility that he might not be able to play his full game, whether that means he comes off after an hour or even has to come on as a substitute for Daniel Sturridge or Dom Solanke or something like that. But I think if he is on his game, he will cause Palace a huge amount of problems. He'll hopefully open up some space for Mane and Salah as well on those wings, and Liverpool could have a lot of fun in attack in this game. So that is all for today's video. Thank you very much for watching. If you want to know how I think Liverpool will actually line up with their starting 11 in the game against Palace, then do check out the FIFA 17 predictor. Hopefully that'll be out tomorrow. I do apologise for the lack of FIFA 17 predictor in the game against Hoffenheim. There were just so many technical difficulties. I did actually shoot it 3 times in the end, and every single time something different went horribly wrong that meant I wasn't able to get out the video. But I'm going to try my best. Fingers crossed we have no problems this time, and I will be able to hopefully get that video out at some point tomorrow for you guys before the match. But apart from that, that is all for today's video. Thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, why not give it a like? If you're new around here as well, hit that subscribe button and check out some of the other videos that have been out on the channel in the past few days. Apart from that, don't forget to follow at LFC Focus TV on Twitter, and I'll see you in a bit for hopefully the FIFA 17 prediction show. Bye for now.